Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, so happy you're back to join us again. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us. We really hope you like what you hear. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is super, super important if you want to have a happy, productive, meaningful life. And that is, why is it so hard for us to change our minds when we learn new evidence? And how do strong people or mentally strong people actually change their minds once they get new information that changes their viewpoint? So we're going to go through that, why your brain kind of fights that, how it works, and give you action items that you can use to remain open-minded, absorb new information, and change your thoughts or your beliefs when you are presented with information that shows your thoughts or beliefs were in fact incorrect. It's going to happen to all of us. We all have strongly held beliefs. They're not all correct. There are points in our life where we're going to be confronted with information that runs counter to what we think. And it's important that we listen to and absorb that information, believe the stuff that should be believed, and change our viewpoints. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So the core message here is that most people don't resist new evidence because they're stupid or they're stubborn. So we need to quit calling people that see things differently than us names. Not helpful. Libtard, far-right psycho, whatever. We got to quit making those proclamations about people. It's not useful. I have plenty of friends and acquaintances who I think are super smart, super intelligent, and they see topics differently than I do. That doesn't make them dumb. That doesn't mean I respect them any less. But we need to quit calling each other names, first of all. The reason that we do that is we resist those things because our identity, we resist believing that information because our identity is tied into our beliefs. And that makes it very difficult for us to change our beliefs because we feel like we're changing who we are. We need to learn how to change our mind on purpose when we're confronted with new evidence or we learn new evidence that shows, hey, I've been thinking about this incorrectly, or I've been operating without all the information I need, and now I feel differently. So we're going to talk about that, all right? So let's just jump into it. One of the hardest things for human beings to do isn't lifting heavy weight or training for a marathon. It's actually changing our mind. It's harder to change your mind in many instances than to put yourself through those rigorous physical activities. We all love to say that we're open-minded until evidence shows up that challenges what we already believe. At that point, we become defensive, we deflect, we justify our beliefs, or we simply shut down and refuse to engage in the conversation. That's not where we want to be as healthy, well-adjusted, productive adults. We need to learn to absorb information that runs counter to what we believe and honestly and fairly assess it and see if maybe we've been thinking about things wrong, and it's something that strong-minded people are able to do. And today, we're going to break down why your brain resists changing beliefs. We're going to give you the science about it, and more importantly, we're going to show you how disciplined people learn to update their thinking instead of protecting their ego. So, with all that said, let's jump into our points, our evidence, and our action steps here. Point number one is your brain is wired to protect your identity, not seek out the truth in many instances. Research in cognitive psychology shows that beliefs are often tied to identity and group belonging, not just facts. And we talk about our brains running on outdated software a lot on this channel. Remember, our brains are still running on software that was developed 200,000 years ago to keep us alive in a very hostile environment where weather could kill us, predators could kill us, warring tribes could kill us. Those day-to-day concerns, those day-to-day risks are much lower now. However, our brain still treats risk as paramount risk, meaning it's life-threatening risk. Even if it's small, our brain looks at it and says, send off the bells and whistles. We got to protect ourselves now. When a belief is challenged, the brain activates the same threat circuitry or as physical danger, like we just talked about, okay? So when you are challenged on your beliefs, your brain reacts like it's a saber-toothed tiger coming into the cave you're living in. And that's not true, but that's how your brain reacts. It's outdated software running in a modern environment. It's known as identity protective cognition. Your brain asks, if I'm wrong, what does that say about me? That's what your brain's doing. So it's important to understand what's going on in your head if you're going to be able to confront it and change your approach. This matters because evidence that threatens your identity feels like an attack, even when it's not. Your brain responds with defensiveness, not curiosity. And that's what we have to learn to change. So our action step here is to detach our belief from our identity. So we need to replace the thought or the phrase of this is what I believe with this is my current working theory. This is how I think about it right now. Strong people don't become their opinions, they test them. We heard this a lot during COVID. Follow the science, follow the science. Yeah, if we had followed the science, we would not have done a lot of the things we did during COVID because there was no science behind a lot of the things we did during COVID. Just for those that need a refresher course, science is about intentionally trying to prove things wrong. Science is about testing and testing and testing until you're certain that you've got the right answer. So it's hypothesis, test, judge the results, retest. That's how it works over and over and over and over again. That is science, not blindly following people in positions of authority. That's cult behavior. It's not science. And that's what we need to learn to do as strong, well-adjusted adults. This is my current working theory. I want to seek out evidence to either prove my current working theory or prove my current working theory wrong, and then be willing to embrace the evidence, whatever it is, regardless if it agrees with or runs counter to our current working theory. But step one is to detach our identity from these beliefs. That's the first step if we're going to do a good job at this. Point number 2 here is confirmation bias rewards you for staying the same. Confirmation bias causes us to seek information that agrees with us and dismiss or discredit information that doesn't. We see this a lot in politics from both of the major parties. Democrats love to point to Trump being old and rambling on and saying, he doesn't have it, he's lost his mind. These are the same people that buried their head in the sand for 4 years when Joe Biden was president. Conversely, the same people that were all over Joe Biden for looking like a Roomba vacuum when he got off the stage because he didn't know where to go are the same ones that will dismiss when President Trump uses the wrong name in a speech or uses the wrong date in a speech or blatantly lies, which he does a lot. More than one thing can be true at the same time. So we've got to quit looking for the things we agree with and discrediting or ignoring the things that we don't. Studies show that people feel a dopamine reward when they encounter confirming evidence, even if it's weak or wrong. And that's what drives that behavior. It's literally a hormone in your body that rewards you for embracing the falsehood or ignoring the truth. We got to stop doing that. It's not a good place for us to be. Your brain literally feels good when it stays comfortable. Being comfortable will ruin your life. If you want to get out of shape, be comfortable. If you want to gain weight, be comfortable. If you want to not grow as a person, be comfortable. Being comfortable is one of the worst things you can be. You've got to challenge yourself all the time. Changing your mind feels emotionally expensive, but it's worth it because you're going to get to the truth and you're going to see the world for what it really is. To do that, our action step here is we have to actively hunt for disconfirming evidence. How can I prove myself wrong? How can I prove my thought process wrong? How can I find evidence that runs counter to what I think right now? How do we do that? One way to do it is to ask ourselves, what would someone smarter than me or that knows more about me than this subject say against this? How would they argue against my current viewpoint? What are the arguments against what I think right now? Also, we can ask ourselves, what evidence would change our mind? How would we change our mind? What evidence could we be presented with that would make us think differently about this topic? Growth requires voluntary discomfort. We have to voluntarily put ourselves in uncomfortable situations if we want to grow as people. It's no different in terms of keeping an open mind and changing our mind when we uncover evidence that shows our current thought process is not in touch with how things really are. Okay? All right. Point number 3. Let's face it, being wrong feels like a failure. It's actually progress, but it feels like a failure. And we have to learn to separate the emotion of feeling like a failure with the reality of knowing we're growing as a person because we've embraced new evidence and we've changed our mind to align with the reality of the situation that we're looking at. So research on learning shows that error correction is one of the fastest ways the brain updates models. People who treat being wrong as failure stop learning. They don't want to fail. They quit doing it. People who treat being wrong as data accelerate learning. We've talked about that a lot on this channel, and we will continue to do so. We need to stop with failure, success, good, bad, right, wrong. We need to think about it as data. There are very few circumstances where things are black and white. There are very few circumstances where things are binary. Ego says, I can't be wrong. Growth says, I update my thought process or my opinion or my belief when the facts change. So we separate our emotions from it. We look for evidence that's contrary to what we think. And then we don't think about it as failure when we have to change our minds because evidence says we're thinking about it incorrectly. So we need to reframe. The action step here is to reframe what being wrong means to ourselves. Say it out loud. That belief worked with the information I had at the time. Now I have new information. I've changed my belief. Pretty straightforward. Updating your beliefs is not backpedaling. It's intellectual maturity. It's recognizing the truth and saying, I was wrong. I've got new information. Now I think about it differently. Absolutely fine to do that. Doesn't make you a failure. Doesn't make you dumb. It's the exact opposite. It makes you more successful and it shows emotional and intellectual maturity. Now, point number 4, and this one's a tough one. Emotion blocks evidence, not intelligence. When emotions run high, the brain shifts resources away from the prefrontal cortex, which is where we do our reasoning, our problem solving, our logical thinking, and it shifts to the amygdala, which is fight or flight and emotional reactions. This is why arguments don't change minds. Regulated conversation does. And we have gotten terrible at that as a country. We want to win an argument. We want to dunk. We want to get clicks and views and likes. If you're chasing that stuff, I'm telling you, you got to grow up. That's not what life is about. Being popular on the internet or getting a bunch of likes and views. And look, we get hundreds of thousands of views on our podcast. And our podcast is entirely about living a meaningful and purposeful life. We don't do gotcha videos. We don't bring people on to argue. We bring people on to hear what they have to say and learn from them. That's the entire point of what we do. So I can tell you, you don't have to sacrifice your intellectual curiosity or integrity simply to gain likes and views on the internet, because we're doing the exact opposite right now. The louder or more aggressive the challenge, the harder the brain resists. So when we allow emotions to take over, logic goes bye-bye and emotions take over, and we have a much harder time dealing with facts and truth and reality. Calm curiosity is what keeps the door open. So that's our action step here, is we need to slow down before we react. I'll give you a phrase you can use to help do this. Let me think about that before responding. I'm processing. I use that all the time. I'm processing what you just said. Let me think about it for a minute. That one sentence shuts off defensiveness. It lets the person that you're talking to know that you actually heard and listened to what they said, and it reopens your brain to use the prefrontal cortex to process the new information you just got and to respond intelligently instead of emotionally. All right. Point number 5, strong thinkers update their beliefs like scientists, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast here. The science says, scientific process says hypothesis, test, updating conclusions when new data arrives, just like we talked about at the beginning. The most successful leaders, the most successful investors, the most successful strategists think this way. They don't get married to an idea. They follow the data to the best outcome, right? Hypothesis, test, update conclusions based on testing, repeat over and over and over again. The bigger the data set we're drawing our conclusions from, the more accurate conclusions we can draw from. That doesn't mean trying it once and then calling it good. That means testing it over and over and over again. Different circumstances, different variables, different situations. Test, test, test. read the data, then make your conclusions. Weak thinkers protect their conclusions. Strong thinkers protect the process and the data that comes out of it. So our action step here is to adopt a belief update rule. Write down, if X happens, I will change my position. This pre-commitment removes your ego from the equation. It allows you to, without bias, accept information because you're not going into it with bias. You've checked your bias at the door. You're unemotionally and irrationally analyzing data and letting the data determine your conclusion. Discipline is not stubbornness. It's truth alignment. Stick to the process. Let the process determine what's going to happen. Okay? So, I think it's very important. Well, the reason we want to do this episode is if you can think critically and you can seek out information that runs counter to what you think or believe right now, you're going to wind up in a better spot. You're going to have more information. You're going to have more data. You're going to have more points of argument by which to make your conclusions, which is going to allow you to make better, more accurate, more reality aligned conclusions. If you want to grow, if you want to lead, if you want to live a meaningful life, you have to get comfortable changing your mind. You're not going to be right about everything the first time out. I would argue you're probably going to be wrong more than you're going to be right. I know I have been. I'm 53 and I can tell you what I believed at 20 and what I was certain was true at 20, I was fucking wrong about most of it. Most of it. And here I am in a better spot in life because I was willing to say, man, I was wrong about that. And here's all the evidence I have to show me that I was wrong about that. The goal isn't to be right permanently or forever. The goal is to be less wrong over time. And I'm telling you, as you get older, you're going to realize how little you actually know. My running joke, I like to say it's a joke. It's really not. It's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20 because I was so smart when I was 20. I knew everything. You didn't even have to ask me. I would tell you I knew everything. That's how smart I was. And I've gotten a lot dumber over the years because I realize now I don't know much, even on subjects where I have a ton of experience and a ton of information and a ton of ideas to share. I almost always parse my statements with, in my experience, or here's what I've learned through these things. I try not to tell people what to do because I don't know what you should do. I don't know your life. I don't know your circumstances. I don't know how you feel about things. You do. But you should be gathering as much data and information as possible to make good decisions. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's mental maturity. And that's where you want to get as a person. And we hope that in some way, this episode will help you keep an open mind, follow that process, and it'll help you get to a better spot. Okay, that's the episode for today, guys. James puts it up right over here every day. Head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All the podcast episodes are there. Links to all the social media accounts are there. We publish a newsletter every weekday you can subscribe to on our website. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe to our podcast, whatever platform you consume it on. Super helpful for us. We're lining up our 2026 interviews. We're going to start doing live streams here where we discuss topics, and you as the audience will have a chance to participate and ask questions and give your feedback live during the live stream. We'll keep doing episodes like this that give you practical tips to implement into your life right now, today, that can help you start building the life that you want. It's all good stuff. You don't want to miss any of it. So make sure you're subscribed. You got notifications on, and we will see you on our next episode.